Conference, I want to begin by congratulating you all. For years, in election after election, we were told that Nicola Sturgeon would be unstoppable. That it was a question of when, not if, she would deliver independence. How many times did we see newspaper headlines saying that Scotland was on the cusp of India F2? One particular paper tended to run that story every other day. Often, it seemed like we were the lone voice of criticism, the only party opposing her demands for a second independence referendum, the only party challenging her handling of the pandemic, the only party standing up to her gender reforms. We knew that her government and her party, shrouded in secrecy, was not as squeaky clean as they liked to portray. And we were criticised again and again for going against the Holyrood consensus who heap praise on her. But no one is saying we're wrong now. No one is saying we're wrong. Nicola Sturgeon's legacy lies in tatters. Her political career ended in failure. And all of you in this hall and around the country deserve credit for seeing her off. As the Prime Minister said this morning, it was the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party that stopped the SNP winning a majority just 2 years ago. It was Scottish Conservative and Unionist MSPs that fought her dangerous gender reform bill every step of the way. And it was our Scottish Conservative Secretary of State for Scotland, my friend Alistair Jack, who stood up for the rights of women and girls by sending that flawed bill back to the Scottish Government. Nicola Sturgeon kept saying and talking about wiping out the Tories, yet because of your hard work, it's her that's gone. Now, without Nicola Sturgeon, that deserves a round of applause, I think. Without Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP have entered into total meltdown. The formerly legendary discipline has evaporated. The unity has now totally broken down. Former colleagues have become bitter rivals. The parties ran out of cash. The police have arrested senior officials. And to top it all off, Humza Yousaf has become First Minister. I can't think of a more obvious sign of a party in crisis than that. As Kate Forbes so memorably said, when he was Transport Minister, the trains never ran on time. When he was Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point. And when he was Health Minister, there were record high waiting times. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for that Highland honesty and for doing our work for us. We've been saying that for years. Now clearly those in the SNP also agree. Because the result of the SNP election proved that. Almost half of his own party didn't think he was up to the job. During the leadership contest, Humza Yousaf proudly proclaimed himself as the continuity candidate, a comment that must come back to haunt him now. But it's true. As SNP leader, he's continued the same divisive approach as his predecessor, continuing to campaign for independence, continuing to engineer constitutional conflicts with the UK government, continuing to ignore the real priorities of people across Scotland. In another one of his ill-advised self-proclamations, Humza Yousaf declared himself the first activist. And that pretty much sums up his whole approach to government. He's more interested in being the first activist than First Minister, in obsessing over splitting up communities than appealing to the country, in uniting the SNP rather than uniting Scotland, in being a nationalist cheerleader than a national leader. And he even appointed a Minister for Independence, a Minister for independence in his government solely to drive forward the SNP's political obsession. That is taxpayers' money shamefully taken away from our public services to pay the wages of a nationalist campaigner. In yet another claim, Humza Yousaf said that he would shift independence into fifth gear. Yet instead, with this famously uninsured driver at the wheel, the campaign is going into reverse. The camper van has stalled, and if Ash Regan's independence thermometer was in operation right now, the mercury would have fallen out of the bottom. And of course, the SNP's financial troubles have blown a huge hole in their economic case for independence. Remember, the SNP said they wanted to hold a referendum in just 6 months' time. They can't even get an auditor in the same time frame. They wanted to set up a central bank when they won't even submit their own accounts. They would borrow billions of pounds from the taxpayers here in Scotland to finance a new country when they still owe tens of thousands of pounds to Peter Murrell. And just for you, Greg, I've got to say to our UK party chair, I'm a bit surprised that the police haven't found a note from Nicola saying there's no money left. Honestly, if I'd known the state the party was in, then I might have bet Nicola Sturgeon a lot more than £100 that I would outlast her. And I've got to say, I'd make the same bet with Humza Yousaf, but I'm not sure he can afford it. But seriously, the SNP cannot even manage their own accounts. How can they be trusted with the finances of an independent Scotland? No one will ever believe a nationalist again on currency, on pensions, or on balancing the books. We've always known that our arguments on trade, currency and jobs were stronger, and the 2014 referendum proved that. But now the SNP lack any credibility. Through their own blunders, the nationalists have crashed the case for independence. Yet, incredibly, despite all that's been done, Humza Yousaf still won't put the blame on his predecessor for the state of his party. Even with an ongoing police investigation, he is so indebted to his puppet masters that he can't cut the strings from Nicola and Peter Murrell. The most powerful couple in the ruling party of government were running the show as a private affair. Well, together, they have smashed to pieces any notion that the SNP are of a higher standard than other parties. And because Humza Yousaf can't bring himself to cut the former leadership loose, this scandal just continues to get worse and worse. However, we can't afford to be complacent. Yes, the SNP are down, but they are not out. We need to work hard to seize the opportunity we've been presented rather than revelling in their misery.